Mark, my husband and business partner, smirked from across the desk. "Clara, consider this your last day. Your services are no longer required." He gestured to my worn-out laptop. "Take that and clear out. This $10 million company belongs to me now, and Isabel is stepping into your role. The divorce filing will be on your doorstep by morning." 2 security guards led me from the building. I kept a small smile on my face because I knew the fail-safe I'd planted would execute in precisely 10 minutes. The result would be nothing short of their complete and utter destruction. Mark's hand pushed the termination letter toward me as Isabel stood beside him, her fingers resting on his shoulder with an air of definite possession. "Effective immediately," he repeated, the gold of his wedding band glinting in the office light. "Security will see you out in 10 minutes." I looked at the man I'd spent nearly a decade building an empire with, the man who had sworn he would love me for all of time, and I felt my phone buzz in my coat pocket. The countdown I'd initiated half a year ago had just triggered. 10 minutes. That was the time they had left before their carefully constructed world imploded. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to how it all began. 4 years ago, Mark and I were sitting on the hardwood floor of our small Denver loft, surrounded by takeout containers and half-empty coffee mugs. Snow was falling gently outside the window as we mapped out the first version of what would become OmniGuard security on the back of crumpled napkins. My hands were a blur on my keyboard, weaving lines of code while Mark paced the room, tossing out concepts faster than I could type them. "What if we could see a security threat before it even happened?" he'd asked, his eyes shining with a familiar fire. "Not just stop it, but predict it?" I remember pushing my glasses up my nose and looking at him. "I can build that," I'd told him with absolute certainty. "Just give me a few months, and I will create something this industry has never seen." He had leaned down and kissed me right then, amid the organized chaos of our startup. "This is why I love you, Clara. You make the impossible seem easy." Those first years were pure magic. We were fueled by cheap coffee and sheer willpower, often working 18-hour days. Mark was the face of the company. He found the investors, charmed the clients, and managed the financials. My world was the code. I built our platform from the ground up, one intricate function at a time. We were a perfect team. Or so I believed. Our wedding was a spontaneous decision, right in the middle of our first major product launch. I found a simple white sundress for $100, and we eloped in the mountains on a Wednesday because we couldn't justify taking a full weekend off. As we stood there, with the Rockies as our witness, Mark took my hands and made a promise that felt more binding than any traditional vow. "We are equal partners in all things," he whispered, his breath warm in the crisp air. "In this company and in our lives, your vision is my vision." I believed him with every fiber of my being. The company exploded. Within 2 years, we went from our loft to a real office space downtown, a sleek, converted warehouse with industrial pipes and polished concrete floors. We brought on our first employees, landed our first multi-million-dollar deal. Suddenly, OmniGuard Security wasn't just a dream sketched on a napkin. It was a real, thriving entity, and it was ours. Or I thought it was. The changes started so subtly, I almost missed them. In our weekly team meetings, Mark began to cut me off when I was explaining technical updates. "What Clara is trying to say is," he'd interject, before re-explaining my own work in layman's terms. When I confronted him about it in private, he would just laugh. "I'm just bridging the gap, honey. You get so deep in the tech stuff, you know." Then came the client meetings. I'd spend weeks preparing detailed demonstrations of our newest features, only to have Mark take the lead while I sat beside him, a silent prop. "Clara is our resident genius," he would say to clients with a condescending smile. "She's the one making the magic behind the curtain." Behind the curtain. That's where he was pushing me. The day Isabel Vance walked into our office for an interview, I was honestly relieved. Finally, another woman to break up the boys' club of engineers and salesmen. She was polished, articulate, with an MBA from a top school and a stellar track record at a competitor. Her references were glowing. "She's exactly what we need," I told Mark after she left. "She gets the operational side in a way we're currently lacking." He offered her the job the next morning. Isabel assimilated into our company culture seamlessly. She overhauled our messy client onboarding, streamlined our project management, and even managed to organize the perpetually chaotic supply closet. She'd bring in pastries for meetings and made a point to remember everyone's work anniversaries. I genuinely thought I had found an ally. The late nights began about 3 months after she started. At first, it was for a huge client proposal. Then, a departmental restructuring. Then, strategic planning for the next fiscal year. There was always a pressing deadline, always something that required both of them to stay after hours. "You go on home," Mark would tell me around 7 p.m. "Isabel and I have to hammer out these projections. Don't wait up for me." I'd drive back to our silent house, the one we'd finally bought in a quiet suburb. I'd eat leftovers alone and drift off on the sofa, only to wake up when he'd crawl into bed at 2 or 3 in the morning, carrying the faint, sweet scent of her perfume. "You're being paranoid," he'd say when I finally built up the nerve to ask. "Half the women in Denver wear that scent. You're imagining things." I started to doubt my own mind, to question my instincts. Maybe I was just exhausted. Maybe the pressure of running a fast-growing company was making me see shadows where there were none. Mark loved me. We had built this together. We were partners. The board meeting in September should have been a celebration. I had just finished a monumental platform upgrade that boosted our predictive accuracy by a staggering 400%. Our clients were thrilled. But when Mark presented the quarterly results to our investors, my solo achievement became a team-wide effort led by our outstanding technical department. "Don't you mean led by Clara?" one of our main investors, Richard Hayes, asked. Mark just laughed. "Of course, Clara is our chief architect, but she'd be the first to tell you it was a collaborative victory." I sat there, frozen in my chair, unable to correct him without causing a scene. Beside him, Isabel took meticulous notes, her face a mask of professional neutrality, just doing her job. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I lay beside Mark, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, and a cold realization washed over me. This was no longer our company. Somewhere along the way, it had become his company, and I was just another employee who happened to be his wife. The next morning, I started watching more closely. I saw the way Isabel would always stand next to Mark in team huddles, the way she'd touch his forearm when she laughed at something he said, the way he had started saying "we" when discussing his decisions, but the "we" clearly meant him and Isabel, not him and me. I told myself it was absurd, that I was being jealous, insecure, all the labels Mark had plastered on me whenever I brought it up. But deep down, in that quiet place where you store the truths you're not ready to face, I knew. The perfect life I thought I had was already a ghost. I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. That November afternoon was just like any other. I'd stopped by Mark's favorite Italian deli downtown, the one with the green awning where the owner always gave us extra cannolis. I had his usual, a spicy meatball sub, just the way he liked it. I juggled the takeout bag while swiping my key card, heading straight for his corner office. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday. I remember because I had just looked at my phone, wanting to make sure I wasn't about to walk in on his 3 o'clock call. His office door was slightly ajar. I could hear chatter from a conference room down the hall. Mark's distinct laugh was among the voices. Good, his meeting must have been moved. I nudged the door open, planning to leave the food on his desk as a small surprise. Isabel's sleek silver laptop was sitting open on his desk, the screen glowing. I should have just backed out. I should have set down the food and walked away. But seeing her machine in his private office on his desk made me freeze. Her email inbox was on the screen, and the preview of the most recent message made my stomach clench into a knot. Can't wait for this weekend. The lodge is perfect for our little discussion. The sender was Mark. I put the food down on the credenza, my gaze locked on the screen. My finger trembled over the trackpad for a moment before I scrolled down. The next email's subject line read, "Once Clara is gone, we can restructure the whole operation." The smell of the meatball sub suddenly turned my stomach. I sank into Mark's expensive leather chair, and I started to read. Really read. Email after email laid out a conspiracy stretching back months. My husband and Isabel weren't just having an affair, they were orchestrating a complete takeover of my company. My company. The one whose platform I had coded with my own 2 hands. "The board trusts me completely," Mark had written 3 weeks prior. "When I tell them Clara has become unstable and her work is getting erratic, they'll back the termination. Her 48% ownership means nothing if she's voted out for cause." Isabel's reply was a dagger to the heart. "The documentation I've been compiling will support that narrative perfectly. Every time she questions your leadership, I've noted it as aggressive and uncooperative. Every time she works remotely, it's unapproved absence. We have more than enough." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The sharp, quiet click of the camera shutter was the only sound as I documented every single damning word. My hands were rock steady, even as my heart felt like it was about to shatter my ribs. 23 photos in total. Then I heard footsteps approaching. I quickly closed the laptop, placing it exactly as I'd found it, and was busy unwrapping the sub when Mark walked in with 2 other executives. "Honey," he said, his face lighting up with that practiced affection I now saw for what it was. "What a great surprise." "I thought you might be hungry," I said, my voice somehow sounding normal. "Hi, Tom." "Hi, David." They made small talk while I played the part of the doting wife, mentioning I had to get back to debugging a new security module. Mark kissed my cheek, a performance for his colleagues. I walked out, my steps even and controlled, all the way to the parking garage, where I leaned against my car and was violently sick. That night, I lay next to Mark as he scrolled through his phone, smiling at something on the screen. Was he texting her, finalizing their weekend plans at the lodge? I studied his profile in the faint blue light. He was a stranger wearing my husband's face. "Everything all right?" he asked, not bothering to look up. "You were quiet during dinner." "Just tired. This new module is a beast." "Maybe you should take a step back. You've been pushing yourself too hard lately." There it was, the foundation for my instability. I made a non-committal noise and rolled over, my mind racing. They were going to push me out. But when? How long did I have? The next morning, after Mark left for the gym, I opened my laptop and started my real work. Not for the company, something much more personal. I began to document everything, every single contribution I had ever made to the company, every algorithm I'd written, every innovation that had originated from my work. I created heavily encrypted folders and backed them up to 3 separate cloud services under aliases Mark knew nothing about. Then I started recording. I bought a tiny voice recorder from a spy shop, paying in cash and feeling like a character in a cheap thriller. But it worked. I recorded meetings where Mark presented my concepts as his own. I recorded him telling a potential investor that I was just the technical help, while he was the visionary. The hardest part was the charade, kissing him goodnight, saying goodbye in the morning, pretending I didn't know he was methodically dismantling our life together to build a new one with another woman. Some nights, I'd lie awake until the early hours of the morning, coding on my laptop while he snored beside me. But this wasn't code for the company. Not anymore. This was my insurance. I embedded hidden tracking protocols into every major system I had ever built, invisible signatures that would definitively prove the code was mine. I created secret backdoors into the platform, not to cause harm, but to ensure I could always prove my authorship. Every line was designed to be completely undetectable during routine operations. "You're working too much," Mark said one morning, finding me asleep at my home office desk. "Maybe we should talk about lightening your responsibilities." Another piece of their narrative falling into place. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Evans, in Boulder, far enough away that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. I paid in cash and used a fake name, pouring out the whole sordid story to a compassionate stranger. She assured me I wasn't going crazy. "Gaslighting," she said during our 3rd session. "What you're describing is a textbook case of emotional and professional manipulation. But what if I'm wrong? What if I really am just paranoid?" She peered at me over her glasses. "You have photographic evidence of their affair and their conspiracy to oust you. That's not paranoia, Clara. That's pattern recognition." December arrived, and the company holiday party was an exercise in torture. I watched Mark and Isabel maintain a careful professional distance, while their eyes constantly found each other across the crowded room. I wore my best dress and smiled until my face ached, playing the part of the devoted wife and dedicated co-founder. "Clara was the heart of our technical team," Mark announced during his toast. I noted the past tense, not is, something that could be easily replaced. 2 weeks before Christmas, I overheard them. I had dialed into a board meeting call early, and they were on the line, thinking they were alone. "After the new year," Mark was saying. "We'll do it in January. A clean start." "The divorce papers?" Isabel asked. "Same day. Rip the Band-Aid off all at once. By February, you'll be officially announced as COO, and we can finally stop all this sneaking around." I muted my line and listened to them plan my execution, taking notes in my encrypted journal. January. I had less than a month. That night, I worked until sunrise, not on company business, but on my failsafe. Every system I had ever built for OmniGuard had a unique digital heartbeat, a rhythm I knew better than my own. I didn't design destruction. I designed vulnerability. I created tiny, elegant flaws that would only become critical if someone knew exactly where to look, the kind of subtle gaps that hackers dream of. I wasn't going to exploit them myself, not directly. But if Mark wanted to take everything I had built, he should know that everything included the intimate knowledge of how to protect it. Without me, those vulnerabilities were like leaving the windows wide open during a hurricane. "Come to bed," Mark called from the bedroom around 4 a.m. "Just 5 more minutes," I replied, typing the final line of my insurance policy. He was fast asleep when I finally slipped into bed, my laptop still warm from hours of work. I looked at his sleeping face and felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my heart. They thought they were so clever, documenting my instability and plotting their takeover. They had no idea what I was capable of when I was cornered. I closed my eyes and began the countdown to January, the day the charade would finally end, the day they would learn exactly who they had underestimated. The January countdown was on, but my mind kept replaying earlier moments, red flags I had brushed aside or explained away. Now, with the truth searing a hole in my chest, every memory was cast in a new, harsh light. The first board meeting I was excluded from happened in early August. I had been prepping my quarterly technical report for weeks, creating visualizations to help our investors grasp the breakthrough we'd made in predictive analytics. That morning, Mark came to my office with a coffee and a look of practiced sympathy. "Slight change of plans for today's board meeting," he said, setting the cup on my desk. "Richard Hayes wants to do a deep dive purely on financials and market strategy. Seriously dry stuff. No need for you to sit through 3 hours of that." "But I always present the tech updates," I said, confused. "Richard specifically asked about our algorithm's progress last quarter." Mark's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'll cover it. You know how these guys get. Sometimes too much technical jargon makes them anxious about what they don't understand. It's better to keep it high level." I spent that afternoon in my office, feeling useless and disconnected. When Mark came back, his summary was vague. "It went great," was all he said. "They're thrilled with our trajectory." A couple of weeks later, I ran into Richard Hayes at a coffee shop. His awkwardness was palpable. "Clara, how are you feeling?" he asked, using the careful tone one uses with someone fragile. "I'm great, Richard." "Why do you ask?" He shifted his weight, looking for an escape. "Mark mentioned you've been under a lot of pressure. Taking some time to recalibrate." Recalibrate. The word left a bitter taste in my mouth. "Richard, I've never been more focused." "Did Mark walk you through the predictive analytics breakthrough?" "He mentioned you'd been working on something." His voice was cautious. "But he's concerned about your intensity. Said that sometimes brilliance and burnout can look awfully similar." I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced a smile and excused myself, leaving my full cup of coffee on the counter. The financial inconsistencies were small at first. A consulting fee here, a software license there. Amounts that weren't massive, but they didn't match any vendors I knew. I stumbled upon them late one night while reviewing quarterly spending, back when I thought I'd be presenting to the board. Apex Tech Consulting, $47,000. I'd never heard of them. A quick search revealed a generic, professional-looking website with no actual information. Integrated Systems Solutions, $31,500. Another digital ghost. I printed the invoices and confronted Mark the next morning. "Why are you digging through financial reports?" he asked, not even looking up from his screen. "That's not your domain." "I'm a 48% owner of this company, Mark. Every domain is my domain." He let out a long-suffering sigh, the one he used when he was being patient with me. "These are standard operational expenses, consultants I brought on to advise on our expansion strategy. Do you want to micromanage everything, or do you want to focus on what you do best? I want to know where our money is going." He finally looked at me, his eyes cold. "Funny. When it's the code, it's your platform. When it's the money, suddenly it's our money." The conversation devolved from there, ending with him storming out of the house. That night, Isabel stayed late to mediate, sitting in our conference room with her perfect posture and a look of deep concern. "He's just stressed, Clara," she told me. "You both are. Maybe if you focused on your technical role and let him manage the business, things would run more smoothly." Looking back, I can see the orchestration. The official restructuring proposal was introduced in September, framed as a natural evolution for a growing company. Mark had a whole PowerPoint deck, complete with org charts, showing him at the very top as CEO, and me as chief architect, reporting directly to him. "It's just formalizing what we already do," he explained to our senior staff. "I handle the business. Clara handles the tech. This just makes it clearer for everyone." "But we're co-founders," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed anger. "Equal partners." "Of course we are. This is just about operational efficiency." The sales lead nodded. The marketing director agreed it made sense. Even my own lead developer stayed silent. I realized the groundwork had been laid long ago. Everyone had already been sold this narrative. Isabel, of course, was taking notes. "I think what Mark is proposing is very logical," she offered, as if her opinion carried the weight of a founder. "Clear hierarchies reduce ambiguity and improve decision-making." "Since when do we need a hierarchy between us?" I demanded. Mark's smile was patronizing. "Since we stopped being a two-person operation and became a $10 million company." The vote was a formality at the next board meeting. I spent the weeks leading up to it trying to rally support, but every conversation felt like I was talking to a brick wall. Meanwhile, Isabel was everywhere. She started joining my client calls, introduced as our operations strategist, here to help optimize our partnerships. She'd sit in on my technical demos, asking questions that subtly undermined my authority. When Clara says revolutionary, what she really means is incrementally improved, she would clarify to clients, her tone helpful. "We want to manage expectations." She started CCing herself on all communication between me and my own team, just to stay in the loop. She scheduled one-on-ones with my direct reports to better understand their challenges. She was positioning herself as the attentive, people-focused leader, while I was being painted as the obsessive, difficult genius. The isolation was the cruelest part. Sarah, our lead developer who'd been with us since the beginning, stopped asking me to lunch. "Just swamped," she'd mutter, avoiding my eyes. Our database architect, who used to brainstorm with me for hours, now sent formal emails with Isabel copied for approval. Even the office admin became distant. Conversations would die down the moment I entered the break room. One afternoon, I overheard two junior developers talking in the supply closet. "Is it true she had a total meltdown in the parking garage?" one asked. "That's the rumor. Mark's been so patient, but it has to be affecting the company." Isabel said we need to be supportive, but maintain our professional boundaries. The situation, that's what I had become. Not the co-founder who built the very platform they worked on, but a problem to be managed. I sat in that closet for 20 minutes, surrounded by boxes of printer paper, finally understanding how completely outplayed I had been. That night, I watched Mark across the dinner table. He'd put on a little weight. Too many client dinners, he'd claimed. But were they really client dinners? "The team seems a little distant," I tested. "Maybe you're just projecting," he replied without looking up from his phone. "Have you been taking those walks Dr. Evans recommended?" My blood ran cold. I had never told him her name. "What?" He glanced up, his expression blank. "You mentioned a therapist recommended exercise for stress." Had I? I couldn't be sure anymore. The gaslighting was so thorough, I was questioning my own memory. The final board meeting I attended was in December. I wasn't presenting. I just sat at the end of the table while Mark presented my work as collaborative team efforts, and Isabel provided supporting documentation for his every claim. The investors barely looked at me. When I tried to add a technical clarification, Mark cut me off smoothly. Clara's absolutely right, and that's exactly what our documentation reflects. He made my expertise sound like an echo of his own knowledge. I left that meeting knowing my professional assassination was complete. That night, as Mark slept, I opened my laptop one last time. The code I was writing was no longer just insurance. It was justice, waiting for its moment. It flowed from my fingertips like dark poetry, each line more elegant and more lethal than the last. 3 days before the end, at 2:14 a.m., I watched our platform do something no one thought was possible. It detected an attack pattern that didn't even exist yet, a future breach, predicted and neutralized before the hackers had even written their malicious code. Apex Banking, our second largest client, never knew they were moments from disaster. Our algorithm saw 17 different vulnerability points being probed by what appeared to be harmless network traffic. But the pattern, the beautiful, terrifying pattern, revealed a coordinated attack scheduled to hit in exactly 6 hours. I called their head of security directly, waking him up. "Tom, you need to get your team online right now. You're about to be hit with a breach targeting your wire transfer system." "Clara, it's 2 in the morning. What are you talking about?" "Check your servers, specifically the Frankfurt and Singapore nodes. You'll see probe traffic that looks routine, but it's not. They're mapping response times for a synchronized attack at 8:24 a.m. Eastern." I heard frantic typing. "Jesus Christ, how did you—" "We're seeing it now. This is massive." I walked his team through the countermeasures, my fingers flying as I helped them fortify their system. When the attack came, exactly as predicted, it was completely ineffective. The call from Apex's CEO, Paul Harrison, came at 9 a.m. "Clara, do you have any idea what you just did? You saved us from what could have been a $100 million loss." "The platform did what it was designed to do," I said, exhausted but exhilarated. "This is why OmniGuard exists. We need to set up a call with Mark and your team. This deserves a press release." My stomach sank. Of course, Mark will coordinate it. The client call was that afternoon. I prepared a detailed presentation showing exactly how our algorithm worked. This was Nobel-level innovation. Mark reviewed my slides an hour before the call. "This is a bit dense," he said, frowning. "Let me simplify it." I watched as he deleted slide after slide, replacing my meticulous work with vague corporate buzzwords. My groundbreaking algorithm became a proprietary threat matrix. 3 years of my life's work, reduced to marketing fluff. During the call, Mark took center stage. I was barely in the frame. "Paul, we're thrilled that OmniGuard's platform protected Apex Banking," he began. "This is exactly the kind of result our team has been working towards." "Incredible work," Paul gushed. "Clara, that 2 a.m. call, you sounded like you were seeing the future." Before I could answer, Mark jumped in. "That's the beauty of our system. It allows our whole team to monitor threats proactively. Clara was simply the one on call last night. There was no on-call schedule. This was my creation." "Actually," I started, but Mark cut me off. "What Clara is too humble to say is that this was a collaborative effort. While she handles the technical side, our head of operations, Isabel, has been instrumental in creating the protocols that made this rapid response possible." Isabel appeared on screen, nodding graciously. "Thank you, Mark. It's all about having the right systems to support our team's brilliant work." The call continued, a masterclass in Mark, redirecting all credit away from me. After it ended, I sat in the empty conference room, staring at the blank screen. My greatest professional accomplishment had just been stolen from me in real time. That evening, I made my final preparations. Every piece of documentation proving my authorship of OmniGuard's core tech went into an encrypted cloud account under my maiden name. Patent applications I'd filed independently, original code repositories with timestamps, early email chains where Mark admitted he didn't understand the tech. I also copied the real financial records, the ones showing payments to Apex Tech Consulting, registered to Isabel's cousin's address, the ones for Integrated Systems Solutions, a shell company in Delaware. They weren't just planning to steal my company, they were already embezzling from it. Wednesday morning, I met with Sandra Whitfield, a divorce attorney my therapist recommended. Washington is a community property state, she explained after reviewing my files. Normally, that's a 50-50 split. But your husband has been very clever. The incorporation documents were altered. You're listed as an early employee who was granted equity, not a co-founder. She showed me the digitally modified files. They'd been changed 2 months ago. He's been planning this a long time, Sandra said gently. We can prove fraud, but it's a long, expensive fight. How expensive? More than you'll have access to once he freezes your joint accounts, which he will. I wrote her a retainer from a personal account Mark didn't know about. Start building the case, I told her. I'll handle the rest. That last night, Mark made pasta carbonara, my favorite. We sat at our dining room table, the one we'd refinished together. Remember when we could barely afford ramen? He said, raising his wine glass. Look how far we've come. We've built something amazing, I agreed, clinking my glass against his. I know things have been tense, he said, taking my hand. But I want you to know you're the most brilliant person I've ever met. After dinner, he said, let's take a real vacation after this quarter. Somewhere tropical, just us. That sounds perfect, I lied, watching him lie to me. When he kissed me goodnight, I let myself feel, for just a second, the full weight of what I had lost. I love you, he whispered. I know, was all I could say. That night, as he slept, I ran through my mental checklist. The code was in place. The documentation was secure. The lawyer was ready. At 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed and walked through our house one last time, looking at the photos of a life that was now a lie. I made a pot of coffee and sat in my office, watching the sunrise. In 6 hours, Mark would call me into his office. In 6 hours, my life as I knew it would be over. But he didn't know about the timer. He didn't know about the code. He didn't know that the person you underestimate is the one who knows your systems better than you know yourself. I opened my laptop and scheduled a single command to run at exactly 10 minutes past 9 a.m. Then I closed it, finished my coffee, and went to get dressed for my last day as Mark's wife and employee. I chose my charcoal gray suit, the one I'd worn to our first big investor pitch. My hands were perfectly steady as I did my makeup and slipped on the watch Mark had given me for our 5th anniversary. Every piece of armor was crucial now. The call came at exactly 9 a.m. Clara, his assistant's voice was strained. Mark needs to see you in his office. He said it's urgent. I'll be right there. I grabbed my old laptop bag, the one from our earliest days, and walked through the office with my head held high. Developers glanced up as I passed. Did they know? The elevator ride felt both agonizingly slow and far too quick. When the doors opened, the assistant was suddenly fascinated by her computer screen. Go right in, she mumbled. They're waiting. They on plural. The scene was staged for maximum impact. Mark sat behind his enormous desk, the one we'd bought together, joking that one day we'd be successful enough to deserve it. Isabel stood to his right, her hand on the back of his chair, in a gesture of casual ownership. She was wearing a crimson dress, a power color. Message received. A third person, Gary from HR, hovered in the corner, clutching a folder like a shield. "Clara, please have a seat," Mark said, using the CEO voice he'd been perfecting. "I'm fine standing, thanks." Annoyance flickered in his eyes. I wasn't following his script. "Very well. I'm afraid we need to discuss your position here at OmniGuard." "My position as co-founder and chief architect?" Isabel shifted her weight. Gary clutched his folder. "Your position as an employee," Mark corrected, his tone sharp. "And I'm afraid that position is being terminated, effective immediately." The words hung in the air. I let a few seconds pass before I spoke. "On what grounds?" "Performance issues, a failure to collaborate with leadership, and creating a hostile work environment," he said, picking up a paper and pretending to read from it. "There have been multiple complaints about your erratic behavior." "Complaints from whom?" "That's confidential," Isabel interjected, her first words. "But they have been thoroughly documented." I looked straight at her, the woman I'd welcomed and mentored. She met my gaze without a hint of shame. "How long?" I asked her directly. "I'm sorry?" "How long have you been sleeping with my husband?" Gary made a choking sound. Mark's face turned red. "That's exactly the kind of baseless accusation that demonstrates your recent instability, Clara. You're paranoid. So your hand on his shoulder is just professional support? The weekend trips to the lodge? The late-night strategy sessions? You're embarrassing yourself," he snapped. But I saw the quick, nervous glance he shot at Gary. "No, you're embarrassing yourselves. But by all means, continue with your performance." His jaw was clenched. This wasn't how he'd planned it. I was supposed to be emotional, hysterical, not cold and composed. My phone was recording everything from my pocket. "The decision is final," he said, sliding a packet across the desk. "You'll receive a 2-week severance and you can keep your old laptop, the one from the beginning." A sentimental gesture. The laptop, the one that held every original line of code, every algorithm that had built this company from nothing. He thought he was being generous, tossing a scrap to the woman he was destroying. He had no idea he was handing me a loaded gun. "That's kind of you," I said flatly. "We think so," Isabel added, "considering the circumstances." "The circumstances being you're stealing my company?" "Nobody's stealing anything," Mark warned. "You're a minority shareholder, being removed for documented performance issues. Your equity is intact, though its value will depend on the company's continued success under new leadership." "New leadership being Isabel?" "The board will make that decision," he said. The board he'd spent months poisoning against me. "Is that all?" I asked. Mark seemed taken aback by my composure. He'd rehearsed for tears and anger, not this icy acceptance. "Not quite." His smile widened, revealing the monster behind the mask. "There's a personal matter." He pulled out another envelope. "I've filed for divorce. The papers will be delivered to the house tomorrow. I thought it would be cleaner this way. A total separation, professional and personal." The room tilted, but I held my ground. Even expecting it, the words were a physical blow. How efficient. "I'm moving out tonight," he continued. "You can stay in the house for now. Our attorneys will handle the assets." Our attorneys, already separate entities. "Anything else?" My voice sounded distant, as if it belonged to someone else. "Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal items," Gary finally spoke, his voice apologetic. "Standard procedure." "Of course." I picked up the termination packet, then the laptop bag. "Clara," Mark said as I turned to leave. I stopped but didn't turn around. "For what it's worth, you're brilliant. You always were. But brilliance without the stomach for the game, it only gets you so far." I turned back then and met his eyes one last time. "You're right, Mark. I never learned to play the game. I was too busy building the company you're about to run into the ground." His smirk faltered. Isabel's hand went back to his shoulder, a gesture of possession. 2 guards I recognized were waiting in the hall, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Morning, guys," I said pleasantly. "Shall we?" The walk through the office was a surreal parade. Faces turned, some looking away in guilty complicity, others just confused. My original team members looked devastated. Sarah half rose from her desk, but I gave a slight shake of my head, and she sank back down. At my former office, I was given 10 minutes. I slowly packed a box with a few personal things: a coffee mug, a photo, a gag gift from the developers. I left the awards, the framed first dollar, the monuments to a partnership that was now a lie. "That's everything," I told the guard. The elevator ride down was a descent from a life I'd never get back. Out through the glass doors I'd helped choose for their symbolism of transparency. The cold January air was a shock. Behind me, the building that housed everything I'd built and lost loomed against the gray Denver sky. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email-IV, Isabel." I deleted it without reading. I got to my car, watching the digital clock on my phone. 9:08, 2 minutes. I put the bag in the passenger seat, opened an encrypted app, and saw the status pending, 9:09. The garage was filled with the normal sounds of a workday 9:10. My phone vibrated once. The status switched from pending to active. A cascade of automated messages began flooding a hidden partition on my device. Firewall rules modified, authentication timeout adjusted, log rotation accelerated, backup verification disabled. Each message was a tiny, seemingly meaningless change. Together, they were devastating, like loosening every bolt on a bridge, just a quarter turn. The structure would hold, right up until the moment it wouldn't. I got in my car and drove slowly up the ramps, windows down, listening. By the time I reached street level, I could already feel it, a subtle shift in the building's energy. More people than usual were walking with a sense of urgency. I pulled into a loading zone across the street, hazard lights blinking, and got out. The light snow felt good on my face, washing away the sterile office air. And for the first time in months, I felt truly free. No more pretending, no more lies. My phone buzzed again. Another update. External probe detected. Source: Moscow. Right on schedule. The vulnerabilities I had created were like blood in the water, and the sharks were circling. But they weren't just random hackers. They were professionals who monitored for exactly these kinds of openings. A cybersecurity firm suddenly showing weakness was like a bank leaving its vault door ajar. Through the falling snow, I could see the lobby. Usually serene, it was now becoming animated. The security guard was on his phone, gesturing wildly. The receptionist was typing frantically, likely fielding calls from clients whose systems were suddenly acting strange. 9:14. A group of developers rushed past the windows toward the elevators. They were practically running. My phone told me why. Database response time increased 400%. Cascading delays initiated. My code wasn't destroying anything. It was just making the system choke on itself. An elegant spiral of self-inflicted dysfunction. 3 people burst from the main entrance, Phones pressed to their ears. One was Gary from HR. "No, no, no." I heard him yell into his phone. "The entire client portal is down. They can't access anything." The client portal, the crown jewel of our services. If that was down, every phone line in the building would be lighting up. 9:16. More people were visible, moving with increasing panic. My phone showed a new development. Beijing probe detected. London probe detected. The international hacker community had noticed. OmniGuard, the company that promised to predict cyber attacks, was now broadcasting its own vulnerability to the world. A taxi pulled up. "You okay, miss? You're getting covered in snow." "I'm perfect," I told him. He shook his head and drove off. I probably did look crazy, standing in the snow, watching my ex-husband's empire begin to crumble, feeling nothing but a deep, satisfying calm. 9:18. The lobby was chaos. I could see Mark himself, down from his throne, gesturing wildly near the reception desk. His CEO composure was shattering. Isabel was beside him, her crimson dress now looking less like a power statement and more like a target. Someone ran across the lobby with a laptop. 9:20. The snow was coming down harder now. Through the flurry, I watched 2 security guards rush out of the building, looking around as if the threat was standing right there. Their eyes passed right over me. Behind them, someone had brought a whiteboard into the lobby. They were trying to coordinate a response manually. It was almost quaint. Mark was on his phone, pacing, running a hand through his hair, his tell for when things were spiraling out of his control. How many times had I seen that gesture? Except back then, I was the one who fixed it. 9:22. A news van pulled up. Someone inside must have tipped them off. A cybersecurity company under active attack was a major story. The reporter was still zipping her jacket as her cameraman set up. My phone buzzed with another text from an unknown number, probably Mark or Isabel. I deleted it. Then another buzz. Tel Aviv probe detected. Mumbai probe successful. The whole world was watching OmniGuard burn. Through the chaos, I spotted Sarah on the 3rd floor. She wasn't running. She was sitting still, staring at her screen. She knew. Our eyes met across the distance, and she pressed her hand to the window. A goodbye, or maybe an apology. I raised my hand in response, then turned and walked back to my car. 9:24. As I drove away, I saw the first police car arriving in my rearview mirror. By that night, OmniGuard would be trending. Cybersecurity giant falls to cyber attack. The headlines would write themselves. The snow drummed against my windshield as I merged into traffic, leaving the chaos behind. My phone continued to buzz with updates, each one a confirmation that the code was working perfectly. Not destroying, just revealing. Everything Mark had built on the foundation of my work was crumbling, and he couldn't even call me to fix it. The irony was so perfect it made me laugh. A real, genuine laugh. The laughter died as my phone erupted with actual calls. The first name on the screen made my blood run cold. Richard Hayes. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot and stared at his name flashing. 12 rings. It immediately started again. I answered, "Clara, thank God." Richard's voice was strained, nothing like the composed investor I knew. What the hell is happening over there? Our systems show OmniGuard is completely compromised. I wouldn't know, Richard. I was terminated this morning. Silence. Then, what? That's impossible. The Apex banking save was just 3 days ago. Ask Mark. He felt my services were no longer needed. But the attacks, they started minutes after. He stopped, the gears turning in his head. Clara, please. Companies are pulling out. Our portfolio is hemorrhaging value. Can you fix this? I don't work there anymore. I'll pay you directly. Consulting fees. Name your price. Richard, I'm sitting in my car, locked out of all systems with no access to the platform I built. I couldn't help you if I wanted to. He swore. This is going to destroy everything. Do you understand? Everything. I ended the call. Another came through immediately. Paul Harrison from Apex Banking. Clara, we're pulling our contract. I'm sorry, but we can't be associated with a compromised security firm. I understand, Paul. How did this happen? You knew this would happen, didn't you? When you called me at 2 a.m., you were seeing the same weaknesses in your own system. I have to go, Paul. If you start your own firm, call me. We'll be your first client. The calls kept coming. I sent them all to voicemail, watching the messages pile up. Then at 10:47 a.m., Mark's name appeared. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. Clara, I need you to come back to the office. Now. No greeting. His CEO voice was gone, replaced by raw desperation. I was escorted out by security, remember? Stop playing games, he yelled. The entire system is failing. We're losing everything. The code, your code, it's the only thing that can fix this. My code isn't the problem, Mark. Then what is? These vulnerabilities appeared from nowhere. The timing is unfortunate, I said calmly. But if you'd kept the person who actually understood the system, maybe you could fix it. Clara, please. His voice broke. I know things ended badly, but this is bigger than us. The company, our company, is dying. Your company. You made that clear. I'll bring you back. Full restoration. With Isabel as my supervisor. Silence. Then Isabel is handling operations. Is she handling them well? Are her protocols helping? This isn't about her. No, the head of operations has nothing to do with operational failure. I heard muffled voices, then Isabel's sharp tone. Clara, this is beneath you. Whatever personal vendetta you have, innocent people are being hurt. The employees who watched me get marched out? That was theater. You wanted everyone to see me humiliated. Now they can see you fail. Poetic, isn't it? Mark grabbed the phone. The Russians are inside our systems, Clara. They're downloading client data. Do you understand what that means? It means you should have invested in security infrastructure instead of office politics. I'm begging you. Those 3 words. Mark had never begged for anything. I can't help you, Mark. I don't have access. I'll give you full admin access right now. And contaminate a crime scene? I'm sure the FBI will love that. The FBI? His voice was a squeak. You haven't called them yet? A major cyber attack on a firm handling security for Fortune 500 companies, and you haven't notified federal authorities. That's going to look great in the investigation. He made a sound that was almost a sob. I got another call. A local news station. I have to go, Mark. Good luck with everything. Clara, wait. I ended the call and took the one from the reporter. Miss Martinez, can you comment on the timing of your departure and the current attack? No comment. But surely the coincidence, I said. No comment. I turned my phone to silent and drove home. My house, soon to be just my house, was quiet and welcoming. Inside, I made tea and opened my personal laptop. The news was everywhere. OmniGuard Solutions suffers catastrophic cyber attack. Cybersecurity firm breached by international hackers. The tech blogs were on fire. Someone had leaked screenshots of the chaos. My phone showed 47 missed calls. The number kept climbing. The vulnerabilities were being exploited from 17 different countries. The client exodus was brutal. By noon, 70% of their contracts had been terminated. At 1 p.m., the FBI announced their investigation. advising all OmniGuard clients to seek immediate alternatives. That was the kill shot. The stock, which had opened at $47, was now at $12 and falling. A text from Sarah. He's crying in the server room. Actually crying. Isabel locked herself in her office. Everyone is updating their resumes. Another text. This is Tom from security. I'm sorry about this morning. We all knew it was wrong. He's getting what he deserves. The local evening news led with OmniGuard. They showed my LinkedIn photo. Brenda Martinez could not be reached for comment. Oh, I couldn't be reached. I was too busy watching an empire burn, one line of code at a time. The call from GlobalSec came 3 days later. I was still in my pajamas when their CEO called. Miss Martinez, we need someone who actually understands predictive threat detection. Your work with Apex Banking speaks for itself. Are you available for consulting? I'm listening. $5,000 a day, minimum 10-day contract. I nearly dropped my coffee. That was more than I made in a month at OmniGuard. When do you need me? Can you start tomorrow? That's how my freelance career began. Word spread fast. The woman who'd saved Apex was available, and everyone wanted to make sure they weren't the next OmniGuard. Within 2 weeks, I had more work than I could handle. Jacob had tried to erase me, and instead, he'd made me a legend. I set up a proper office in what used to be Mark's study, replacing his pretentious unread books with my server rack. Every morning, I'd read the latest on OmniGuard's collapse. From $10 million to nothing, a cautionary tale. An anonymous source, who I suspected was Sarah, had detailed how Mark had systematically undermined me. 6 weeks after the attack, Isabel's departure made the news, a small item in a tech gossip column. Sarah texted me that night. You should have seen it. Mark called her incompetent in front of everyone. She threw her laptop at him. I felt a twist of something, not sympathy, but recognition. She thought she was different. Now she knew what it felt like to be discarded. The divorce papers arrived. Sandra, my lawyer, was puzzled. He's not fighting for anything. The house is yours, accounts are split 50-50, and he's waiving any claim to your future earnings. What about the OmniGuard shares? She laughed. What shares? The company's worthless. Your 48% of nothing is still nothing. Mark called once during the proceedings. I wanted to apologize, his voice was flat. I got caught up in the image of being this powerful CEO. Melissa made me feel like I could be someone more important. You're looking for sympathy? No, forgiveness. I can't give you that, Mark. I know. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. You were the soul of the company and I cut it out. Yes, I said. You did. The divorce was finalized a month later. Meanwhile, the FBI investigation concluded. They found no evidence of internal sabotage. My code was too elegant for that. But they did find the financial irregularities, those phantom companies. Richard Hayes called me one last time. We're writing it off as a complete loss. $10 million gone. How could I have been so blind? You saw what Mark wanted you to see. No, I saw what I wanted to see. A charismatic male CEO with a convenient technical partner doing all the real work. It's the oldest story in tech, and I fell for it. And Mark? Unemployable. Between the failure and the FBI probe, he's done. Last I heard, he was moving back to Ohio to live with his parents. Ohio, the place he'd sworn he'd never return to, defeated. My consulting business, which I'd incorporated as Clara Analytics, was thriving. One evening I got a text from an unknown number. The office is empty now. They're changing the locks tomorrow. It was Sarah. The era was over. The dream we'd built was dead. I poured a glass of wine and stood on my deck, looking at the Denver skyline. Somewhere in that maze of lights was an empty office with my code embedded in its dead heart. And here I was, alone but not lonely, broken but not destroyed. The wine tasted like victory, bitter and sweet. I was still holding the glass when I heard the knock. It was past 10, 3 months after the collapse. I looked through the peephole and almost dropped my glass. It was Mark. Not the CEO who'd fired me, but a ghost. His hair was unkempt, his polo shirt wrinkled, his hands shaking. I opened the door. "Clara." His voice cracked. "Can we talk?" "We have lawyers for that. Not about the divorce, about OmniGuard, what's left of it." I leaned against the doorframe. "Why would I care?" "Because I'm here to beg." The words tumbled out. "The company is dying. I've got 2 weeks of capital left. Please, 5 minutes." Maybe it was curiosity. I stepped aside. He stood awkwardly in the living room, a space he no longer recognized. I'd removed every trace of him. "Sit." He perched on the edge of the couch. "The FBI cleared the company, but the financial investigation found Melissa's schemes. I'm facing civil lawsuits from investors." "Melissa's schemes? You signed the checks." His jaw tightened. "She convinced me it was standard practice." "I was an idiot. You were stealing." He ran a hand through his hair. "She's gone. Left the state. Last I heard, she was working at her uncle's car dealership in Texas." "A car dealership? What do you want, Mark?" He pulled out a folder. "I want to offer you 48% ownership of OmniGuard, full shareholder rights, board seat, complete technical autonomy." I laughed. 48% of nothing is still nothing. It won't be nothing if you come back. We both know the platform works. The vulnerabilities that destroyed us, they were surgical, precise. Our eyes met. He knew. Why only 48%? To maintain a controlling interest for the board. But you'd have veto power. We'd be equal partners, just like we always should have been. I walked to the window, making him wait. "Isabel is gone?" "Completely. I'll put it in writing. And my technical decisions? Absolute authority. And if you ever try to undermine me again, I walk. And this time I take the platform with me, legally." His face went pale. "How? Don't underestimate me again." He nodded slowly. "I never should have." We spent the next 2 hours going through his proposal. It had everything: full compensation, back pay, and a clause that any future sale of the company required my explicit approval. After he left, I called Sandra. "He offered you what?" she said, stunned. "Brenda, this is unprecedented. The question is, do you want to go back?" Did I? I thought about my code, my creation, sitting dormant. I texted Sarah. Mark came to see me. Her reply was instant. "Please come back. We need you. The platform needs you." Monday morning, I walked through OmniGuard's doors. The office was a ghost town. The 12 remaining employees were clustered in the break room. They all stood when I entered. Sarah stepped forward. "Welcome back." "Where's Mark?" "In a conference room. He said he'd stay out of your way." Smart. I spent the morning assessing the damage. It was bad, but my architecture was still there underneath the digital duct tape. "Give me 72 hours, I told the team. "We'll be stronger than before." The code welcomed me back. I closed the vulnerabilities I'd created, then built new defenses that turned those weaknesses into strengths. By Wednesday, the platform was humming. Mark appeared in the doorway of the server room. "The monitoring systems, they're all green. They'll stay that way. Thank you." "I'm not doing this for you, Mark. I'm doing it for what this platform can be." "I know." "Good. Now let me work." Within a week of the fixes going live, Paul Harrison from Apex called. Me, not Mark. We want to return as clients, but only if you personally guarantee the architecture. Send the contract to my attention, I said, glancing at Mark, who was pretending not to listen. The first board meeting, I sat directly opposite him. Before we begin, I interrupted, I need to clarify the new structure. All technical decisions go through me. Jacob handles operations, but any decision affecting the core product requires my approval. That seems, one member started. Non-negotiable, I finished. Silence. They knew without me, they had nothing. Mark tested me constantly. He scheduled a meeting with a CTO candidate. I walked in and dismissed the candidate myself. He tried to cut the dev team's budget. I called an all-hands meeting and publicly doubled it. We can't afford, he started. We can't afford not to, I cut him off. By month 3, we'd recovered 4 major clients. My name became the company's seal of quality. Tech blogs called it the Clara effect. It was month 4 when Mark confronted me late one night. We were alone, reviewing quarterly reports. The numbers were phenomenal. You did it, he said. The vulnerabilities, the attack. You orchestrated all of it. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's acknowledgement, the timing, the precision. No one else could have done it. If you believe that, why not go to the authorities? He laughed bitterly. With what proof? Besides, we both know I deserved it. You destroyed my life, I said quietly. Tried to steal my work, humiliated me, betrayed our marriage. I was an idiot, he said, arrogant and selfish. I threw away the best thing in my life for an ego boost. Yes, I agreed. You did. 6 months after my return, we held a company celebration. I stood at the front, alone. OmniGuard fell because we forgot what made us strong, I said, looking at Mark. We forgot that technology isn't about politics. It's about building something that matters. The applause was genuine. Later, Jacob approached me. For what it's worth, you're the most brilliant person I've ever known. I just wish I'd remembered that before I lost everything that mattered. You didn't lose everything, I reminded him. You still have 52% of a $12 million company. That's not what I meant, I knew. But that door had closed the moment he'd chosen power over partnership. Good night, Mark, I said. Walking to my car, I felt the weight of my keys. My phone buzzed. A reporter. I smiled. Mark had learned the hardest lesson of his life. Never underestimate the woman who built your kingdom, because she knows exactly how to bring it down. And more importantly, she's the only one who can build it back. This story of brilliant revenge had you on the edge of your seat. Hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Clara watched her code activate in real time, bringing down the empire Mark built on her stolen work. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.